Bloodshot Records was born right here in the heart of Chicago in 1994, founded by three music lovers who shared a passion for blending punk rock's defiance with the soul and storytelling of traditional country music. It became known as insurgent country, but it was about more than genre. It was about attitude. At a time when country music was becoming slick and polished, Bloodshot offered something grittier, something real. It was music for the outsiders, the misfits, the barroom poets whose lyrics carried the weight of everyday life. From the very beginning, Bloodshot made its mark by championing artists who didn't fit the mainstream Nashville mold. Artists like the Bottle Rockets, Robbie Fulks, the Waco Brothers, Ryan Adams, and Nico Case told stories of heartbreak and hope, rebellion and regret with a distinctly Midwestern voice. Chicago, with its gritty urban landscape and working-class roots, was the perfect backdrop for this new wave of alt-country, a sound that was as much punk as it was country, as much as Chicago as it was Americana. Bloodshot's influence extended far beyond its roster. The label helped cultivate a community in Chicago's vibrant Wicker Park neighborhood, a hub for artists, musicians, and dreamers in the 1990s. Their shows were legendary, loud, unpredictable, and fiercely authentic. Venues like Lounge Acts and The Hideout became sanctuaries for this new sound, where the energy of the crowd blurred the line between performer and audience. It was a scene built on passion, connection, and the kind of music that didn't ask for approval. Over the years, Bloodshot Records expanded its sound, embracing folk, punk, rockabilly, and beyond. What remained constant was its commitment to authenticity, rejecting the glossy perfection of mainstream music in favor of something raw, heartfelt, and imperfect. This ethos made Bloodshot a blueprint for countless independent labels, proving that there was a lasting place for music that spoke to the real, complicated lives of everyday people. With me today to discuss his new book titled The Hours Are Long, But the Pay is Low, A Curious Life in Independent Music, is one of the founders of Bloodshot Records, Rob Miller. Enjoy. Oh, before we get started, there are a few bad words used in this episode, so please make sure it isn't heard by sensitive ears. Also, my interview with Rob Miller came about through a mutual acquaintance, our friend Ed Roach, who I met working at a record store in the suburbs, Downers Grove, in case you're wondering, back in the 1900s. After my talk with Rob, Ed shares a quick story about the first time those two met, so stick around for that. Rob Miller, you didn't grow up here. You grew up in a faraway place called Michigan. I will say that although I didn't grow up in the suburbs northwest of Detroit in the 70s like you did, you paint a good picture of your early years. What would you say you miss most about that time in your life?
Wow. Nothing other than you're a kid and you don't know better. I mean, when I was a little kid, it was my world. It was all I knew. Cars, everyone, cars this, cars that. But really, I go back rarely and I feel nothing but a sense of deep, unabiding horror and gratitude that I got out.
You talk in your book about being an outcast, but you were cool enough to start a band in high school. Do you and your old bandmates, the Wood Butchers, still get together and play when you're in town?
Well, I didn't so much start a band. It just was like, as things go when you are 16, 17, they're like, hey, we need a drummer. Do you know how to drum? And I was like, I know how to spell drum. I know what a drumstick looks like. And I could play along to a Cramp song, which most people can. And that was that. I am in contact with one of the guys. Another one lives in Chicago, and I see him pretty frequently. And another one, unfortunately, passed away 3-4 years ago.
So there is a chance for a reunion. You just have to get somebody to fill in the one.
I don't think the world is no closer to being ready for us than they were back then.
You listened to a lot of radio in your youth, eager to discover something other than the classic rock dreck prominent here in the Midwest. In your book, you talk about the DJs that were influential in your musical upbringing, like Michael Halloran and the electrifying Mojo, guys who played songs that spoke to you. Did you ever get a chance to meet them and thank them for their influence on your musical learnings?
I would have been absolutely too terrified to get anywhere near the electrifying mojo. He is a mythical presence in Detroit. But the interesting thing is, or the gratifying thing for me is, I was able to track down Michael Halloran, who now lives in LA, and I sent him a book to just say thank you. And he was thrilled, and it was great. It was really gratifying. And I was also able to track down one of the record store owners from Detroit too. He lives in San Diego now. And that was great. To just be able to say thank you was incredible. It's been one of the more gratifying parts of this whole process.
You moved to Chicago in 1991. You worked as a house painter and a handyman. For those who weren't in Chicago in the early 90s, what made that time memorable for you?
Well, especially coming from Detroit, which just seems so desperate at the time. And which is not to say that Chicago wasn't, there weren't bad things going on here in the early 90s. I mean, especially from 30 years on, there was just such a sense of possibility here. There were a lot of labels, a lot of stores, a lot of neighborhoods, and a lot of people came from all over the Midwest to come here to experience that. Like there just was a sense of opportunity that did not exist other places where I had lived. It just felt great. It felt liberating.
As legend has it, you and two friends were discussing various unsigned bands around Chicago whose music you liked when you decided to pool your money to release a CD listing the names you wanted to include on a bar napkin. Whatever happened to that napkin?
Your guess is as good as mine.
I
I
had
mean,
that.
it lasted until the next morning, which is a miracle. But yeah, nothing. I don't know.
That seems like it would have been one of those cool things to have in a frame
It would
somewhere in
be. It
somebody's
would be.
office. Like, this is where it all started. And
Well,
hope
we
somebody.
didn't have any expectation of longevity, so a lot of those things didn't get saved. We were just kind of running with it, and yeah, that kind of ephemera just got. The early days are woefully undocumented or underdocumented.
You were a bullied, out of sorts Detroit kid who found salvation in post punk and new wave. How did that early sense of not fitting in shape the kind of music and artists you championed with Bloodshot Records?
Oh, that's a good question. It made me realize that there is value in those voices, that you don't need to be popular or mainstream to be listened to and not be afraid of it. So why worry about that kind of stuff? Like that being an outsider is a gift. So run with it. It's very liberating, you know. You don't have to worry about like will this once you give up the idea of fitting in, it opens you up to a whole world of possibilities because you're not looking through that lens anymore.
Bloodshot Records famously blurred genre lines with its alt country and roots punk hybrid. Was there a moment early on when you realized you'd carved out a sound that the industry didn't know how to categorize? And how did that shape your approach to doing business?
That was everything. They wanted a neat pigeonhole. So we tried to give them one by coming up with Insurgent Country. But even then, that became very narrow very quickly. People very quickly put rules and parameters on it, which struck me as the same kind of horseshit I was running away from earlier on. So yeah, we just learned to be comfortable between the genres and not look for things that would fit neatly into them just for the sake of some marketing opportunity or something. And we never asked bands like, hey, could you be less this and more like this to fit into this amorphous industry standard? That just seemed like a waste of everybody's time. And it wasn't personally interesting to me. To me, music is the most interesting when it is falling between those cracks, when it is pushing the boundaries of a particular sound. I mean, within a year or two, people were wanting us to just put out the same old 97s record over and over and over again. And when we signed Robbie Folkes and put out his first record, people were like, "Oh, that doesn't sound like Bloodshot. That's not a Bloodshot record." I'm like, "The hell it isn't." Like I decide what that is, So yeah, those labels get really boring really fast.
There are a number of times in the book where you included something about which I was unaware, which then sent me down a rabbit hole, like mentioning the Doobie Brothers appearing on TV's What's Happening. Had no idea about that. Is
Oh,
your brain? Oh,
really?
I had no idea.
Wow. Have you seen it?
I saw a clip of it on YouTube. This is one of those things where I immediately went. I was like, "What? I need to see this." Bonkers, 2 episodes, and yeah, I mentioned it to a friend of mine, and he said, "Oh yeah, don't you remember the line?" And I was like, "I don't remember this at all." It was like, do be or not do be something. I don't know. He had the whole thing. So is your brain overflowing with pop culture references like this all the time?
Yeah, yeah. I refer to my brain as a lint brush. I don't want it to be there, but it's there. But I put that in as in the greater point of getting across like how rare it was to actually see bands on television in an era where now we can see every concert ever performed the day it happens. So to see a band on TV was like I would look at it and be like, "Oh, so this is music. Maybe I'll get it." And I would see the Doobie Brothers on What's Happening and be like, "I don't like this. What's wrong? What's wrong with me? Why can't I fit in?" You know?
Obviously, Midnight Special, there were like concert stuff, but to have Pat Simmons and Michael McDonald or whoever from the Doobie Brothers just hanging out with Rerun on What's Happening is just a crazy, crazy notion. Now it becomes one of those things where more and
It was
more
an invasion into my world of television I did not appreciate, quite frankly.
you wanted to just focus on Rerun and Raj and not
Exactly.
have to
And
deal
their
with
hijinks.
and
Exactly.
they're sure there's zany hijinks. The book's title, The Hours Are Long, but the Pay is Low, A Curious Life in Independent Music, reads like both a cautionary tale and a badge of honor. When people ask you if they should start a new indie label, are you more inclined to recommend they expect and embrace the long hours and low pay? Or are you more inclined to tell them to go to college or learn a trade?
Yeah. Well, I mean, my joke answer, which wasn't really a joke most of the time, was, when people would ask, what advice would you give to people starting an independent label? I would say, don't. The title is kind of my Groucho Marx style of speaking things. I would refer to demos as it wasn't very good, but at least it was long. But when you're in it, when you're doing it, when you're passionate enough about it, you don't even notice that you just spent 14 hours doing it and that you got paid nothing for it, that you had to get up the next morning and go paint a bathroom in Rogers Park for a couple $100. So it is a bit of a badge of honor, but it just speaks to, yeah, it's hard and you're an idiot to do it. There are so many easier ways to make a living. But at the end of the day, if everything I tell you about why you shouldn't do it, you're like, that guy's full of shit, I'm going to do it anyway, then you're exactly the type of person that should do it. Because if anyone had told me at that age, don't do this for these 472 reasons, I would have been like, I can still do it. I'll figure it out.
Speaking of the book's title, how many different titles did you consider before settling on this one? And would you care to share any of the rejected ones?
I settled on that one pretty early. I fiddled around with a few others, but nothing really. I latched onto it and I kind of forced it down my editor's throat and a couple other people who were like, "Nah, I don't know about that one." And I was like, "No, nothing fits it better than that." And it has my voice to it as well. So sorry, no good no good foul balls there to tell you about.
That's okay. I hear the stories of people who say I had a long list and I gave it to everybody that I've ever met and asked them to weigh in. And I was like, oh, that really seems like it would kind of cut down on the writing time of it all, which would wear you down. Taking a step back a moment, you had mentioned working a 14-hour day and then waking up the next day and painting a bathroom in Rogers Park. Were you still doing a lot of side jobs those early years of Bloodshot until things started to solidify?
Oh yeah, I didn't put down the paintbrush full time for 4 or 5 years, and I still would, even later than that, take really lucrative clients every once in a while. Like I did a lot of galleries at the Chicago Children's Museum. They paid well and they paid by the hour, and it was easy if you could put up with the charming shrieks of children all day long. But yeah, it was a good way to make good money on your own terms. So it helped a lot because I could turn down jobs and go to CMJ for a week or go to South by Southwest and not worry about it.
So, for those of you considering starting an independent label, it's not all riches and caviar immediately. It
It
took
is
Rob a
not.
couple years to get to riches and caviar.
I once did a guest lecture at Columbia College, and it was music business something, and this one, and I showed up from a job site where I still had paint on my clothes, and I was talking about running a record label. And this one guy was quiet at the back of the room. And at the end of my scared straight speech that I gave everyone, stay in school, kids, learn accounting. Um, he raised his hand. He goes, "What do you recommend people do with their first $1 million that they make?" And I was like, "Gotta be kidding! Look at me, kid. This is the good life right here. This is, you know."
A friend of mine owned a bicycle shop, and when he finally closed it, he said, "You know what? What the best way to become a millionaire selling bikes is? It's that
Start with
old
two
thing.
million.
Start with 2 million, right?" And so, to me, it looks like record labels are probably not that far off.
Yeah, it's a pretty grim attrition rate, and the fact that we lasted as long as we did is a combination of luck and some skill and some good mojo, I guess. Maybe some talent. I don't know.
You describe Bloodshot as fiercely artist first in an industry driven by egos and cash flows. What's one business decision you made that seemed a little bonkers at the time, but ultimately helped define Bloodshot's mission?
Um, not selling out to a bigger label who loved us. And this was during like kind of we called it the alt country scare of the late 90s. Whiskey Town had done really well, the old 97s, Wilco and Sunvolt, and every major label tried to get one of these scrappy independents on their, on in their portfolio. And a guy flew in from Nashville to make us an offer we seemingly couldn't refuse. And it was a big number. But and it was weird. It was gross. He like folded a piece of paper. He wrote a number on a piece. Like this happens. He wrote a number on a piece of paper, folded it, and slid it across our coffee table that we had garbage picked from the alley, a couple years before. And I looked at it and was like, that's a nice number, but I'm not interested. I need more money because I would need to like take care of all the artists that you don't care about. You're here to buy a couple of the higher tier ones. The other ones will be, thrown to the curb. And we made small talk. I said no, and then he got in his limo and went back and flew to Nashville, and that label was out of business within 3 years. And there were other labels our size or smaller who gave into that, and they immediately were co-opted by, in their decision making and what bands they could sign and how they should do things, and they ended up going out of business too. So I think that's probably the biggest one. There's always little ones about giving exclusive deals, or there was several artists that went on to sell a lot of records that gave us their demos, but I just didn't like it. I just didn't like them. So that seemed fairly dishonest for all parties around for me to like paint a smile on my face and go, this has a chance to be really popular. Let's let's do it. Let's release it, And looking back on it, there's a couple that I regret. Those names will be taken to my grave with me. But there are others that like went on to really big things, but I still hate the music. So, those things like that.
Based on the timeline you just mentioned, it sounds like Nashville guy with a limo showed up maybe 5 years after you guys started the label. It seems like you would have just been getting your feet kind of under you as somebody's trying to lure you away. Was it
Well,
tempting at all? You'd already lost one of your two partners at that point who decided to go off and do other stuff. So, was there any thought to giving in to that temptation, or not even a moment?
it's when looking back on it, I marvel at how little thought I put into saying no. I didn't get in this to work for other people or to become this huge media concern. Like there was always the temptation to grow and grow and grow. When we had a string of records, Nico Case, Alejandro Escovedo, Ryan Adams, all like kind of right in a row, and we were really like getting a lot of attention in the industry, and people would our distributor would fly in and stuff, and they'd be like, "Oh, you need a bigger office. You need to sign these people that are higher up the food chain and things like that." And I was like, "But then I can't sign these people over here that are interesting to me." A lot of local bands, and weird bands that would never sell more than a few thousand CDs, but that's what I love to do. And to give that up for the false promise of unlimited growth, I didn't sign up for that. I didn't. I saw how that movie ends. Before I got burned out. That's why I left Detroit. Was I got burned out on this process, the meat grinder of the industry. So I didn't want to do that again. And I don't work well with others. So I didn't want to. I didn't want somebody else to be my boss.
You mentioned Nico Case. You worked with Justin Townes Earle, Ryan Adams, the old 97s at basically the start of their careers before they really took off. What is it like to spot raw, unproven talent? And how did you know that those artists were going to be something special?
Well, I have a gift. It's each. I would like to say that I had a thunderclap moment of clarity for all of them, but sometimes, like Nico, it took a while. Like I really did not like her first record when it came into the office, but I just got ground down by our publicist at the time, Kelly Hogan, just kept playing it and playing it and playing it. And I was like, at some point, I was like, oh, now I get it. But with like Justin Townes Earle, it was immediate. It was within two songs. I was like, I got to work with this guy. And somebody like Alejandro Escovedo was like, here's somebody, this legend who I already had several albums of his in my collection, and the industry decided that there was no place for him. He was washed up, and he came to us, and I was like, what? Okay, yeah, let's do that then. And in the old 97s, every artist has a unique Genesis story, which speaks to being an independent label. There isn't a process. There's not a hierarchy to go through to get signed. There's not like, oh, you need to give your demo to this person who then passes it to the A&R department, who then thinks about marketing possibilities, who et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. If I heard it and I liked it, we figured out a way to make it work if they wanted to.
Your first concert was Alice Cooper with the Joe Perry Project opening. Sorry, I missed that. What are some of your favorite or most memorable concerts and why?
Oof. Not that one. Well, I mean, you always go back to the formative ones, seeing Devo in a club, which opened my eyes to the possibility that I could even like music in a live setting like this, that there was an intensity and an immediacy to it. And, seeing Black Flag or the Cramps for the first time. I mean, I can still see the Cramps for the first time in my head. That was just unbelievable. And the sense of community that comes with that. I mean, the first time I saw Irma Thomas, or I mean, I get asked this question a lot, and it's hard to pin it down into moments because it's all part of the greater continuum. Like I'm always like tomorrow night could be the next best show that I see. And I can't thinking about terms in terms of it's the best show, then you're just looking back and then you're just being nostalgic. And nostalgia for an independent label is death. You can't be resting on your laurels. You can't be like, oh, remember when we did this, because then you're going to try and recreate that. And I never tried to recreate that. But that said, seeing John Lee Hooker at the Blues Festival in Chicago and in 1986 six. I mean, I got to see so many legends, and then I also got to be there at, seeing Minor Threat and the Cramps and the Gun Club. Well, actually, the Gun Club put on terrible shows, but I got to see them. Um, uh, Steve Earle, the first time I saw Steve Earle, the first time I saw Dwight Yoakam. I mean, the first time, like one of our bands, Ruby Boots, when she played our Yard Dog party in Austin at South by Southwest for the first time, no one had heard of her. Her album hadn't come out yet. This would have been 2017, 2018. She had been playing to 30, 40 people on the way down. She didn't know what she was doing. Is this worthwhile? And then she gets off. She just destroyed the stage at South by at the Yard Dog party, and she got off stage and she just had this look of euphoria. And in that moment, she was a rock star, and she knew that she could do this. And to me, as a label weasel, that was like those are the great moments.
Speaking of the book, which is why we're here. How did this come about? Was this your idea? Did somebody come to you and go, "You've got all these great stories, Rob Miller. Why don't you share them?" And how long has this been in the works?
A long time. People had been after me for years from early on, to write something. I wrote most of our press releases and most of the web content, and my byline has appeared hundreds, if not thousands of times in newspapers of stuff that I wrote for writers to put in their newspapers, because I figured it would be better if I formed the story and let them print it and take credit for it. But I didn't want to do a history of Bloodshot, which is what people kept pitching me on, because that seemed boring and limiting and kind of exclusive. So I wanted to write something that spoke to the broader idea of independent communities and the creative underground, and how to do that. And I started in earnest on this in about 2018, I think. Yeah. And I started by just asking people what they wanted to know about what it is to run a label, because it seems to many to be kind of a mysterious process, or it's very opaque. And so I was pulling together all these questions and thinking about how to make it more universal. And then, shit with my ex-partner, business partner, came to a head, and then COVID hit, 1-2 punch. And so everything that I had worked on for so long, kind of disappeared with astonishing speed. And I was, as we all were, we were pretty isolated during COVID, and I was, sitting out in a shed in the woods trying to figure this out. And I started going through 25 years worth of interviews, written and podcasts that I'd done, and the audio, and coming up with more questions. And I saw how my story, while unique, I came to realize that even though my story is unique, everyone's story is unique. And by tying my biography into the life of the label, I was able to show how music can mean so much to so many people. And I started working on these questions that had a lot of durability. For 25 years, people kept asking the same questions. Why Chicago? Country meets punk. How did that happen? Et cetera, et cetera. And when I had to answer them for newspapers or magazines or websites, whatever, I would have to give a short canned answer. And this allowed me the freedom and the space to really give expansive answers and tie that into the greater idea of community, and how my story is really, in a way, a lot of people's stories. And hopefully people will see themselves in finding that record store as a kid, finding that radio station, finding that label, finding that community that allowed you to realize that there is not one way to look at the world.
It's funny. The next question was, you described the book as part memoir, part history, and part fever dream. What made you choose this free form style over more traditional music business tell all? And you basically just answered that a second ago by saying, I didn't want to do the history of Bloodshot. I wanted to tell my story, which I think you did really well. So,
Well, and I wanted to unconsciously, I guess, because a lot of this stuff did happen unconsciously. Like I didn't know until I sat down to write this book that meeting that guy at the record store so many years ago would inform the way I look at retail, or getting a package sent to me by Norton Records as a college DJ would always make me appreciate independent radio and never take them for granted. And just that idea of community was building within me, and I didn't even really know it. And so I didn't want it to be just kind of a linear story of I did this and then I did this and then I did this. That strike, who am I? Who gives a shit about me? Whatever. I'm just a guy. But by weaving my biography back and forth and having a non-linear timeline and being kind of loosey-goosey with language and that th reflecting the chaos of owning a label, I think is a more compelling read for people. I had been involved in a couple of those oral history type projects over the years, and to me, they just seem like a recitation of how fucked up the bands got, and wow, look at this, how much money we wasted in the studio, and oh yeah, and so was sleeping with so and so, and boy, we were what colossal idiots we were, and there was nothing informative or enlightening about the music or the creative process or anything like that. And one that was about Detroit punk rock that I was in, I went in on this long tangent about how when Detroit hardcore got super right wing and it got obsessed with rules and looks and what bands and albums were okay and which were not, I was like, I'm out, and then I just did a glib thing at the end, and the glib thing was the only thing that made it into that section of the book. And I was like, so I didn't want this book to be anything like that. I didn't want it to be a gossip column or anything like that. I wanted it to be like when you put it down, you feel good about independent music and the underground. Like you feel great about being a part of it, and you want to continue to be a part of it. Because if we do not, as consumers or as fans of it, support it, it will go away. We can't take these things for granted. Next thing we know, it'll be just Walgreens and Texas Roadhouses lining our neighborhoods, and none of us want that, or I certainly don't want that. And if you want that, then I don't want you in my neighborhood.
well, it reminds me of breweries. I mean, breweries have taken it on the chin lately as well. And I have to say to people, like, if you want independent breweries to stick around and not have a world of Coors Light, you got to get out and go to their tap room and buy their products when you can. And I think a lot of people think that these things are going to be around forever and that somebody else will support them, and that's not
Right, that
always the
they can
case.
go to the record store every now and again on a lark, or to the bookstore, or to that diner or whatever. But I'm going to do most of my shopping on certain unnamed giant oligarchs websites. You know, that doesn't help. It's like in the early days of burning CDs and stuff. People would in front of me at the merch booth, like say to their friend, like, I've already got this one. I'll burn it for you. And that's if you profess to love this band, this label, this fill in the blank, then don't hasten its demise by with neglect, like be cognizant of this stuff, because every purchase you make, everything you support is a political act. And the sooner you realize that, the sooner you'll be more mindful of where you're spending your money, because again, these things, it's not a given that that record store will be there forever. It's not a given that Joe's Dumpling House down the way will be there forever, if unless you make a conscious decision to spend your money there and to support that.
Joe is well known for his dumplings too, so
He
I
is, isn't
encourage
he?
everybody to get over to Joe. It's weird. He's an old Irish guy, but he makes a killer dumpling. Hmm. Your book promises cautionary tales and a from the trenches perspective. What's one harsh reality about running an indie label that romanticized outsiders never see coming?
That, for me, I mean, that people you trust for a really long time turn out to be not trustworthy. Or the other big one would be that it is not a meritocracy. You can have a great record and people won't care. They will chase the newest fluff that is put in front of them, and you will just be banging your head on your desk. I mean, my desk had a little concave thing right there where I just was, I was convinced that people would get hip to the objective coolness of this record, and then it would just disappear. And meanwhile, something of, in my opinion, far lesser merit would do really great. So yeah, yeah, that kind of stuff. Like it's a the you're playing with a stacked deck with an independent label, and the sooner you realize that and just not try and change the deck, but deal with that deck, the better off you'll be mentally and probably from a business perspective.
Were most of your artists understanding of that, or did you have a handful of them that said, we should be huge now and it's your fault that we're not?
Yeah, every once in a while you would get people with unrealistic expectations, especially given the kind of music they were making. If they want to be playing auditoriums, then don't be playing weird hillbilly music, or yeah, and so you try and talk them off the ledge, and we always tried to keep it a conversation, and if people were unhappy there, then we didn't want to be that label that kept people unhappy people there. That doesn't help anyone. So we would work it out so that they could leave and try and find someone who would help them get what they wanted. I remember one artist who was absolutely convinced that he should play uh, the Vic the next time he was here. Well, whatever that is, 2,500 people, 3,000 people. But he wasn't going to tour at all. He was just going to come play the Vic. And I was like, that's not. And he was he wasn't like 19 or something. He knew how the business worked, but he was like, this record's really good. People should come see it. You should fill the Vic for me. And I was like, what am I? What am I in the Blues Brothers driving around a junked police car with a loudspeaker duct taped to the top? It was just like kind of madness like that. But most people would get it, and they would come to us knowing that they had to have realistic expectations and that we weren't going. And we had other artists who did go to major labels and then came back to us, like the Bottle Rockets or Robbie Folks, Alejandro. Like they had been to the major label Meat Grinder and saw how tens of thousands of dollars would be wasted on stupid, stupid stuff. And they knew we weren't going to do that. That meant that they had to recalibrate their expectations. But I think in the long run, that helped them find their lane that they could make a living at this rather than chase this smoky phantom of success that money would buy you. And then there were a few others who genuinely thought that they would make it. And they did. Nico and Justin Towns Earl are a couple of examples where we were like, yeah, we can't get you a tour bus. So you should go somewhere else. Let's work and try and get you the best deal possible, and you can do these things and try and fulfill that part of what you want to get out of this.
In September 2009, you threw a block party at the legendary venue, The Hideout, to celebrate Bloodshot's 15th anniversary. After 14 hours of music and entertainment for 4,000 people from 28 states and 4 countries, you paid out the bands, security, event staff, stage and light crews, and made donations to various organizations, leaving you with the princely sum of $29. You then promptly spent half of those earnings on a giant margarita. Was making little money on these events a pretty common occurrence?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, our Yard Dog shows and our all those showcases gigs were financial catastrophes in a lot of ways. But if you look at it in just the short term, if you look at it as a one-time event, it was f financial idiocy for us. But it spoke to the bigger picture of the community, like make an event so that people will come and check out artists that they maybe don't know or aren't familiar with, and you get to be around a group of people who are part of that community as well. And so I always found them to be, well, I not that I could enjoy myself. I don't have that kind of personality. I wish I was somebody else, but but that you, if I was somebody else, I would have enjoyed it a great deal, I think. Um, and that particular one in 2009, I mean, we had just gone through a hellish several months in the wake of the Great Recession, and we thought we were going out of business. So we thought, why not go down swinging with this great party? And it turned out we figured out a way to, like the cunning little mammal running away from the dinosaurs, we figured out a way to last another few years. But yeah, those showcases were monumental undertakings a lot of the time, and yeah, to make money at them would didn't even figure into the calculus. We assumed we assumed that we ticket sales might, if we broke even, it was a good day.
Which Bloodshot artists, if you don't mind me asking, do you feel never got the respect they deserved, either from critics or from the listening public?
Mo Most of them, I mean, that Robbie Folks is not in the top tier of the pantheon of great American songwriters is a crime. But I always, boy, I would make a case for a lot of them. Uh, uh, that's the one that sticks out to me, though.
You name, if I counted correctly, 7,841 Chicago music venues, many of which are closed. Is there one or two you miss more than all the others?
Well, obviously, would I want to go to Lounge X right now at this point in my life and inhale three-quarters of a pack of Marlboro Reds just by standing there and go wading into a bathroom that reminded me of a third world black ops site? No, but boy, I miss missing Lounge Acts. I would, those shows were just unbelievable. And what a great space. That's that's the one that I think sticks out for me and for a lot of people of that era.
It's funny. I try to explain to my kids how clubs used to allow all the smoking, and you'd get home at the end of the day, and if you didn't clean yourself off at the end of the night, the next morning when the shower water hit your hair, you'd have that like horrible smoky smell. And when they finally stopped smoking in bars and clubs, it was like an all new day. But I remember so many club owners were like, this is going to put us out of business. It's like,
Right, yeah.
it
There were many a show at Lounge X where I would be at the bar part looking over at the stage and I couldn't see the singer's head because it was the smoke was just, it was a low ceilinged venue and it was just like here's a headless singer up there and it was, and there were a lot of times because I was going to grad school at the time at DePaul right down the block from Lounge X, and there were a lot of Friday nights that I was at Lounge X till 3, and then I had an 8 a.m. seminar the next morning, and I would get there, and I felt bad for whoever had to sit next to me because I just smelled like a beer-soaked ashtray, and they'd be like, "Oh, what? Graduate English student living the life."
so skeevy, so skeevy. After
How
25
did the
years,
hobo get into this seminar?
after 25 years with Bloodshot, you moved on. Looking back, what do you wish you'd known in 1993, 94 that might have made the ride easier? Or do you think not knowing was part of what made it all work?
Not knowing was very liberating. Not knowing what the business could do to you and the amount of work that it would take, the amount of constant work it would take was a good thing not to know that. Because if I knew then what I know now, it never would have happened. And as far as like personal relationships with business partners, yeah, I would have taken to heart a little bit more of Ronald Reagan when dealing with the Soviets, trust but verify, rather than just give my trust freely. Um, and there's a lot of other things that, yeah, I don't know. I kind of beat myself up a lot about opportunities missed, but at the time, at the time those decisions made sense. So I didn't really linger on a lot of that stuff, and I haven't really in looking back either. I mean, I guess I would have liked to have spent a little more money here and there on certain things to maybe make the office a little bigger or better or nicer or something, but nothing really stands out to me.
It has been, I think, 4 years and a month since you sold Bloodshot. How have you been keeping yourself busy? Are there hobbies you've taken up that you wouldn't have had a chance to start if you were still running a label? What is day to day life for Rob Miller like?
Um, well, while I did sell the label 4 years ago, the legal stuff with other parties went on for a couple more years, and it was just a colossal waste of time and money. What do I do with myself? I wrote this book, and but otherwise, I was just kind of burnt out and shell shocked by the whole aftermath, and just kind of tried to figure out what I liked to do again. Because for 25 years plus, I advocated, all I did was advocate for others. And now I'm advocating for myself a little, and that's a weird feeling. I mean, I'm sleeping more, I'm eating better, I'm drinking less. My tinnitus cleared up. I no longer have stress dreams about being naked on stage with a bass, which I don't know how to play in the first place, or not being able to find the green room, or things like that. So, there's that, which, isn't to say that I don't miss it. I'd gladly give, a bad 3 a great show, it takes a lot of 3 a.m. bad tacos to ruin a really good show. Um, yeah, we'll see. We'll see what the next step is.
I must say, I really enjoyed the book. I was wondering if I could talk you into reading a portion of it for the podcast listeners.
One question I get all the time is how did you sign artists? Like, how did you come across them? What made you want to sign them? And at some point, we had Kelly Hogan as our first paid employee. It was, I think, $500 a month. Don't spend it all in one place. And she had just moved up to Chicago to get away, like me, to get away from the music business. And like me, she failed terribly at that. And she was our publicist, and she was saying that uh, her friend Dale Watson, the Texas honky tonk absolutist, was playing at Shuba's down the street. Would I like to come? And at this point, I knew Kelly Hogan as a friend of mine's girlfriend who just moved up here from Atlanta. Didn't really know anything about it. I'd heard that she could sing a little. Big deal. Anyone can sing a little, right? Anyway, so in the book here, I describe how we go to that show. And back to Kelly Hogan. She kept opening the Bloodshot mail, calling radio stations and writers, and chatting endlessly. One night, she said her friend, honky tonk absolutist Dale Watson, hey, I just said that, was in town at Shuba's. Did I want to go? At some point during the set, Dale asked her on stage. She sings, I thought. They duetted on the Conway Twitty and Loretta Lynn chestnut after the fire is gone, and the room lost its collective mind. What the everlasting fuck is this person doing working other people's music? After the show, I fired her, sort of. She kept working the phones, but her musical itch needed scratching again. She recorded compilation tracks, singles, sang on records by the Sadies, Alejandro Escovedo, Pine Valley Cosmonauts, Decemberists, Jacob Dylan, Mavis Staples, and more. Ultimately releasing her own solo albums and rising, according to Andrew Bird, with whom I will not disagree, to the level of a national treasure. Like mine, her move to Chicago to escape music was not very effective. That was my A&R strategy. If I had stuck to a plan, a checklist, I would have missed the invigorating oddnesses that lurk away from the easy or the inevitable.
All right. I've got a speed round of questions
Uh-oh.
with a variety of topics. Are you ready?
I'm not good at state capitals, but I'll kill you on vice presidents.
Number one, Maurice White founded what Chicago band in 1969?
Earth, Wind, and Fire.
Nice. Bruce Springsteen, Talking Heads, and Bob Marley all played their first Chicago shows at what long defunct venue?
I am not from Chicago. O'Banions.
Not a bad guess. Although, boy, Bob Marley would have been interesting at a punk rock club like O'Banion's. That would be Quiet Night on Belmont,
Oh,
just around the
right.
corner from the
Right.
Vic. You said as a kid the music you grooved along with were the theme songs like the Beverly Hillbillies, Green Acres, and the Addams Family. Do you remember any of those songs' lyrics, and will you sing some of them now?
Uh, Green Acres is the place for me. Farm living is the life for me. Land spreading out so far and wide. Keep Manhattan, just give me that countryside. Dun 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 dun. New York is where I'd rather stay.
Wow. I was going to make you do the whole
Fresh
thing,
air,
but
Times
oh,
Square.
you are my wife. Goodbye,
Goodbye,
city
city
life.
life.
If you had to be trapped in a room listening only to Led Zeppelin or Leonard Skinner for an entire weekend, which would you choose and why?
And poking my eardrums with an ice pick is not an option here.
I mean, I guess you could say, you'd rather blow
I
out the
guess
pilot light.
I
And
guess I would say, though I do not know much about either one of them, and I do love When the Levee Breaks. I think that and Misty Mountain Hop. I think those are incredible jams. I will have to pick Leonard Skinner only because I would be afraid that I would have to hear Stairway to Heaven,
a
and
great answer.
that I do not need.
Yeah. Although you'd be okay hearing Freebird.
You know, in my head, being a recovering drummer, I can tune everything else out and just and pay attention to the incredible drumming on that. Though Zeppelin had, that guy too. But, you know,
Here's a very Chicago question. Malort, a refreshing digestif or the sign of the coming apocalypse? What is your feeling on Malort?
my former staff used to love at least once a year, typically at the Bloodshot holiday party. They love to video me taking a shot of Malort and then posting the resulting sounds and faces I made. So I leave you to fill in the answer yourself.
The book's title, The Hours Are Long, but the Pay is Low. A Curious Life in Independent Music is available now. Rob Miller, thanks so much for hanging out with me.
Oh, thank you. It's been a pleasure.
As promised, here's a short story from my friend Ed Roach about his first time meeting Rob Miller.
Rob's one of the only people who I can remember the very first time we met because it was pretty odd. I was mid 90s. I was with a friend, Allie, who was a local Chicago booking agent at the time. And we went to the Old Town Ale House on North Avenue and went up in there drinking to that little perch next to the bar where you fit probably 3 or 4 people at best. And I was sitting facing west out the window on the side street there. I see this homeless guy sitting on the curb wearing multiple layers of clothing. I think he even had like a jean jacket on. It was close to 100 degrees outside. It was horribly hot. I'm just staring thinking like, this guy looks too young to be so damn sad and beat up sitting there. And me and Allie just drinking, talking, laughing, having a good time. And this guy's just sitting out there. Every time I look, just sitting on the curb with his head hung down. And then one of the times I got up to get another round of drinks, I turn and I see the homeless guy coming through the door, and he's just going directly for that window perch, straight up to Allie. And so I kind of quickly gathering my change and a couple drinks and making my way towards the window, thinking, what the hell am I going to do to deal with this? The only way out of that window for this guy is to come right back at me on that little tiny narrow stairs, a couple steps. And I step up in there and just sit down without nobody saying a word. And then all of a sudden, Allie just says, "This is Rob." But it was really awkward. It's uncomfortable. And this guy, Rob, is just as uncomfortable as can be as well. And he just stares at me, a little smile on his face. And I was just like, what is going on here? And then silence, still awkward, uncomfortable. And then he says, starts to say something, and all of a sudden Allie interrupts and goes, "Oh, he's got a record label here in town, Bloodshot." So it turns out it wasn't a guy sleeping in the alley, it was Rob Miller.
Thanks for listening to this episode about Bloodshot Records with author Rob Miller, and special thanks to my guest today, Rob Miller, whose book, The Hours Are Long But the Pay Is Low, A Curious Life in Independent Music, is available now. Ask for it at your local bookstore or get it at the links in the show's notes. As always, if you have any questions about anything covered today, anything to add, or have an idea for a future episode, I'd love to hear about it. Send me an email at chicagohistorypod@gmail.com. I have links to items related to Chicago's amazing music history in the show's notes if you or someone you know is a music history nerd like me who would like to learn more. Anything ordered through those links, not just the items listed, may earn a small commission for the podcast and help offset production costs at no additional cost to you. Check out the Chicago History Podcast social media pages for articles and pictures related to this episode and past episodes posted throughout the week. Much of the original art for the Chicago History Podcast used on the social media pages was created by John K. Schneider. Thanks, bro chacho! If you need creative work done, you'll find no one better. Send him an email at angeleyesartjks@gmail.com. I will be back soon with more stories from Chicago's history. Until then, get out and explore when possible. Learn about whatever city you live in and stay safe.